Hello, everyone. Welcome to Click Moments, where the right information at the right time is a portal from where you are to where you want to be. And I'm your host, Beth Orr, and I am so excited about this interview today because I have my friend James Nave, who is a poet, a storyteller. I think of you as a creative in so many different ways. So whatever descriptors I could come up with, it wouldn't encapsulate the full range of who James is. So welcome to Click Moments.
Well, thank you, Beth. I'm glad to be here because one of the reasons why your podcast or video cast, as the case may be, depending on how you're listening to it out there, one of the reasons I want to be on this is because I want to be more unscripted. I want to stumble. I want to not be so cleaned up. And I'm so often so certain of things, especially when I'm doing something like this.
Right.
And I don't want to be certain. I mean, I want to just be. So that's why I want to fumble around and not worry about editing or any of the rest of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. And that's really who I am as a person. I believe in following our intuition and just being authentic to who we are. And that's what conversation is. And I think you are somebody who really, you are a person. I've watched you. Not only have I listened to you in your interviews, but I've had the benefit of really watching you over the last few days at your book launch, and then at you supporting a friend of yours at their book launch. And as I've had the benefit of watching you, you really are a conversationalist, and you are unscripted. To me, I see you as somebody who, that's where you're really strong.
I like to be unscripted, but I will say, and for those of you listening, I will say to you as well, when you get in a situation like this, which we're in, and we're in this together, but we're in this with you as well.
Right.
When you get in this situation, it's really easy to go performativity. It's like, I'm going to show you my shiny self, which is fine. I mean, shiny is good. We want to shine, right? But sometimes you can just overdo it, and it becomes your public persona. And while there's an honesty to that, there's also it's almost a veil or some sort of, it's not a mask, but it's a translucent potential mask that could turn into a more solid mask.
Yeah. So
Now, how do you get over that? I don't know.
well, I think you just kind of shake a little.
I'm shaking a little bit right
And
now.
you just kind of let it go. But you just get into the moment, right? For
Yeah.
me, there's so many times that I think, just having a conversation, not even necessarily looking as much, but just genuinely having a conversation with you, which I think that's how you get there, right?
That's true, but in a situation like this, whether we like it or not, we are alone in this room, and I can talk to you. We have you out there as well, whoever you are, and it's a conversation between who knows how many people. You and I are leading the questions. We're leading the inquiry,
Right.
and yet somebody named William or Susan or whomever sitting there listening to us as well. So how do we all gather?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe we just do this.
Well, and it might be helpful to let folks know where we're at, because they've never seen me in this location. So would you kind of share with us a little bit to the viewer?
I will. Well, you've never seen you in this location because you've never been here either.
I have not.
So for those of you who are out there wondering, well, where are these two? We are at a place called Lake Eden. And Lake Eden is located 5 miles west of Black Mountain, North Carolina, and Black Mountain, North Carolina is 20 minutes east of Asheville, North Carolina. So we're going west from Black Mountain toward Asheville if we were driving. We're not driving, we're sitting here. We're in an old house. I know it looks well kept, it is. It was built in 1923, and it's been here ever since. It's a classic Western North Carolina mountain home. It's called Mountain Stream. I'll let you guess why it's called Mountain Stream, because guess what? There's a stream running by the porch, which is on the other end of the house. The reason why this is an important location is because it was formerly the administration building for Black Mountain College. Black Mountain College was an experimental college that existed on these grounds starting in I think it came here in the 40s, actually in the late 30s, and it was here until 1956.
Okay.
And it was an experimental college. Buckminster Fuller erected the first geodesic dome on this campus. It fell over before lunch. They had lunch, went out, and they put it back up the next. And they finally got it up, right? That's the story I heard. I don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah.
So we're at the Lake Eden Retreats, and it's part of an organization that produces many, many things. And one of the events that Lake Eden Group produces, Leaf Global Arts. Leaf Global Arts produces the Leaf Festival and the Leaf Retreat, also held on this campus. So the Leaf Festival, for those of you who might know the Leaf Festival, it's a big music festival in the fall with top names, great stages, poetry, dance, movement, music, gathering of the tribe, if you will. And how do you get to be a member of the tribe? Well, you just buy a ticket and come, and you're a member of the tribe.
Yeah, but how many years have you been coming to
I've
this?
been helping Jennifer with the Leaf Festival since we started it in 1995.
Oh my gosh.
So
wonderful.
we started this years ago, and prior to the Leaf Festival was the Black Mountain Festival.
Okay.
And the Black Mountain Festival was a festival organized by a guy named David Peel, who owned a place called McDibb's, which was the listening room in this area, the Asheville area, the listening room back in the 80s. And it was the only one.
Right.
And they served really almost nothing. Some chips, Budweiser, Blue Ribbon, and the top shelf beer was a Heineken, and Coca-Cola and other soft drinks. But people would come and they would listen to some of the great acts. Some of them are still around. Taj Mahal, Jerry Jeff Walker, Doc Watson.
Nice.
For three.
Yeah.
And they would travel through, stop off at Black Mountain, do a gig, pick up $800, head on north to Richmond or Charlotte or wherever they were going for the next gig. Going down the road. Going down the road feeling bad.
Right.
Going down the road feeling bad.
That's the perfect, I think, segue for our time together, because I think what many of the people who are listening into my program are looking for is to find a way to live their authentic life. There's so much rhetoric that we have in our life about what we should do. We get poured onto by our families and by society, and we fall into careers and relationships in a life that oftentimes we don't even know how we got there. And so to me, that the authentic life, and the word authentic is kind of like a buzzword now, right? But there's something, an undertone that's really valuable, I think, to really talking about what that really means and how people get to living a life that they've chosen. That's what it's really about.
That's the key. How do you figure out how to choose? How do you figure out how to make those choices?
Exactly.
And that's when you see somebody in action and you talk to somebody who will report, well, I have made some choices that led me to this place, and I'm very satisfied with that. Okay, then you say, oh, they're living an authentic life. But I would suggest that the authentic life is the descriptor that follows the choice. Okay, so what they're actually saying is, I was willing to make a choice. And most people I know who have made some choice that leads them somewhere where they're satisfied. And it can be anything, really. It doesn't, you could be working at your little convenience store that you own somewhere on a corner, and you could be the happiest thing on earth. And it's authentic because you're doing something that you chose to do that now has rewarded you. Okay, so when somebody's able to do that, maybe luck comes into play. Maybe you pull the lottery ticket. Who knows how you get there? But when you arrive at that point, because you've made some genuine personal decisions that you have thought about, you've thought through, you've referenced yourself, like, okay, this feels right for me. Okay, I'm going to make that choice now. when you do get to that point, it's quiet. It's easy. You're like, whew, sure, I'll have another latte. Thank you for offering. Whew, how easy. So this authentic life, I would say that we are all, because we are alive, we're authentic. We're genuine. You and I are genuine. Okay? There's truth in our existence. So if we can accept that our authenticity is part of the natural us, and then think about, well, okay, I'm authentically me. I can't be anybody else, so I have to be authentically me. What do I want? Now, here we are to the chatter.
Yes.
This is where the chatter is.
Yes.
And if the street is busy and there's lots of chatter and you have too many
Absolutely.
deliveries happening at once, you might not be able to hear yourself.
Exactly.
So sometimes when we say, I'm going to pray and I'll ask for help from the universe, or some people say, I have the committee that will tell me, or I'm going to pray to the Lord, or however you go about accessing that greater wisdom, we may be first praying to ourselves, because we may already have that answer. And it's just like, I've got to sit quietly until I feel something that fits. It's not that much different than going shopping, really.
You're going to need to explain that a little bit more.
Well, I mean, I like to go shopping, right? So you go into a beautiful store. Maybe there's, something on the rack that you would like. And you try that thing on, you think, oh wow, I'd love to have that jacket or whatever it is and you put it on, you go, oh, ugh. It looked good on the rack, but it does not feel good on me.
Get it? Yes.
And then you're like, and then there's this little color that catches your eye, four bays down or whatever, and you go like, what is that? A Shanghai Tang silk jacket. Shanghai Tang is a brand that you can get in Asia that's beautiful. This happened to me.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll buy it. I don't care how much it costs. I'm going to buy it. Oh, whoo! And you put it on, and it creates a sense of love. Now, I know it's a commercial thing, and I know you're buying something, and we're all victims of Madison Avenue, et cetera, et cetera. You could come into that, but I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about a sense of something that fits.
Right.
This fits.
Absolutely.
And this serves a greater purpose than me just consuming something so that I will be dazzling at the next party I go to. It fits.
And I think not only does it fit, but it fits you and it feels good to you, right? So if you walk into that party, if we're going to continue on with this
Let's
metaphor,
go to the party
right?
now. All right.
If you're going to walk into that party and nobody else in that place loves what you're wearing.
Nobody else notices.
Love what you're wearing. And you come in and you feel like this looks amazing on me. I love how this looks. To me, I feel like part of that authenticity is around finding something that does something within you that makes you feel so alive. It's what it does inside of you.
So if you want to carry that metaphor just even a little further, you walk into the party and you are wearing yourself. You become the garment.
Yes.
You become the designer piece of clothing.
Yes.
And it's underneath what you're wearing. You're not, occasionally one might walk into a party with no clothes, but most of us dress to go to a party, right?
Right.
So I'm saying you are dressed, you have your beautiful outfit on or whatever it is, but if you're wearing your skin, like you designed your skin for yourself, your bespoke self, you are wearing.
Yeah.
When you get to that, and it's hard to get to, because I don't get to that. I don't get to that all the time. But when you hit it, you know it. And we've all done it. Everybody here We've all done that
Yes.
at some time or another when it just felt right.
Right.
And when we do that, that's a terrific field sign to accurately say, in this moment, I have a deep sense of my own gravity and and within that center of gravity lies my authenticity. I am true right now.
That is what I live for, is for having conversations that illuminate what that looks like to different people, what that version of it looks like. Hearing people describe to James, when you've been that authentic version of you, this is what it feels like, this is what it looks like. And it may not look like that for somebody else, but when you talk about it and you light up and you share about that silk jacket, it does something to you, right? I think we're so used to the noise in the street and all of the rhetoric that we forget that that's even a possibility if we've ever even imagined it or tasted it ourselves. And to me, I want to live that version of my life as much as possible for as long as possible. I want to walk into every party and be like, this is just me. This is who I am. I feel good in my skin. And that's the kind of life that, to me, there's something different about living like that.
Well, the more it happens, the better it feels, and the better it feels, the more one does it.
Yes.
Now, it may be also a question of experience and maturity. Okay, I've covered a lot of ground. Okay, I'm fairly comfortable with just sitting at a table, jotting a few notes down in my journal.
Yeah.
You know, I'm comfortable walking into a room. That said, I can be uncomfortable as well.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And one of the ways that I have found to be, that helps me to be really authentic, when I meet somebody, like I'm meeting you now, I come as a journalist. I'm a citizen, curious citizen journalist. I really want to know what you have to say. For example, earlier today, a couple of fellows came by. They've been here before. They're part of the family. Okay. Fellow comes by. I say, "Well, you're here." He said, "Yes, I used to live here. I'm now in Tucson." "Do you like Tucson?" "Absolutely. My wife teaches at the university." "And what is your job?" I said, "I'm an engineer." "Fine. I like engineers. I think it's interesting, right? What do you engineer?" "Good question."
Right.
He said, "Oh, I'm working on a spacecraft with 500 other team members that we're going to send to the moon in 2025 as an exploration to see how it works, so that the next one that goes up will take all the gear up so that the people who are coming will then have the gear on the moon, 2030 or wherever they're going to go. So 2025, they're going to send this craft up."
Okay.
So this guy's telling me how much work they're doing. Okay?
Right.
He told me that when you are on the moon and the sun shines on the moon, it's 200 degrees Fahrenheit on the moon. And when the sun is not shining, it's like Arctic, well below zero. He told me that when you send the craft up, it's a rotisserie, they call it. Why? Because there's so much heat from the sun when the sun reflects off an object that if that object doesn't turn, it will fry the object.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there in this very house,
Right.
going like, "Are you kidding?" And then I asked a few more questions.
Sure.
And he told me a bit more about how this was going to work and how big it was and all the effort and how much brain power it took to put this thing together. And I felt like I was a sponge.
Absolutely.
So when you can gather enough wherewithal to encounter somebody, and when you encounter them, if you can ask them some questions Like, well, what do you do? How do you do that? Not superficial questions, but like deeper questions. Curious, like probing. Gee, I want to know. You will start to become a sponge.
Absolutely.
And that's when you'll start to be wearing that authentic skin. It will feel so authentic because you're actually doing something with somebody else in the rhythm of what humans are designed to do, which is have conversations.
Absolutely. And what you're describing is presence. You were so present with him in that moment that you saw that opportunity as a journalist to just, naturally who you are, but you saw that opportunity by being in that moment with him to probe and ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes this goes back to what you said earlier. You were a sponge because you were present, and you were present because you didn't let the busyness of whatever else you were doing or I'm sure they knocked on the door and you were doing something and you stopped doing that thing to get to know this person and be curious,
mm-hmm.
because that's who you are. You're a conversationalist. You're interested in people. But it takes being fully committed to who you are and to explore that moment to, I think, reveal a bit about your authenticity, to kind of tamp down the expectations and to kind of just roll with it. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And another thing to do, I've done this a lot. I do radio show like you do, so I'm very comfortable with this,
Mm-hmm.
and so are you, as
Mm-hmm.
you all can see. If you're not comfortable with it, if you're thinking, well, that's all well and good for those two, they do it all the time, but I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. Here's how you can do it. And you can be very comfortable doing it. When you meet somebody,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't require much other than just to look at them. Mm. Greet them with your full self. Mm. And when you do that,
yes.
They will not be thinking about you. They will want to be thinking, oh, well, look at the earlobe, it's not quite right, or whatever it is
right.
that you don't think you have as an asset.
Mm-hmm.
They will be thinking, my gosh, this person is actually interested in me. Oh, what a relief. Thank goodness somebody is seeing me for who I am. And all you have to do, skilled or unskilled, is to say, tell me something about you that you would like for me to know. And then you just nod.
Right.
If you can shake your head like this, then you're okay. That's all you need to do. And you'll be surprised at how quickly they will start to tell you the story. And you will also be surprised at how that will open you up.
Absolutely.
And how the next question will just pop out with no problem at all.
Yeah.
And then when they reverse it and ask you something about yourself, you will, rather than give the pat answer that you've always given because it's the one that feels the safest, but it's really the most risky answer because it's not really safe at all. It's a shallow answer. You will give the less risky answer, the less shallow answer, the truthful answer when they ask you back. You'll give them something that's true. It may be simple, but it'll be true. That's authenticity.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I think you're getting down to, I think of a couple of things. I think of like the energy, like us being this close even, right? This is a close proximity. As an empathetic person, I can sense people's energy. I can feel people's energy. And when you're just present in a moment and you connect with somebody, what you're describing by just asking them that question is to genuinely be interested in that person, to be curious about what their energy or what you're feeling from them. And it reminds me of, have you ever been at a retreat or at somewhere where they've asked you to soul gaze with somebody? Where you look into somebody's eyes and then they lead you through exercise. Like I went to a retreat, I've been to a couple where they have you pair off and you look in somebody's eyes and they say, now this is a person who is also loved and lost. Look at this person deeply. This is a person who knows what it's like to feel heartache. This is a person who knows what it's like to be uncertain and afraid. And they slowly lead you through this type of an exercise. And when you connect with somebody like that and you see the response, you see just a twinge, like a moment where that person is responding to what's being said, you start to have this human connection and you start to realize there's no reason to be anybody other than who you are, because everybody in the essence of them is more aligned by just being who they are, like their authentic selves. There's no reason to put anything else on top of it. That's where that connection is once you see the essence or the humanity, because we're all the same.
Right. That's similar to some acting exercises.
Okay.
I'm not an actor. I have taken acting classes. I do appreciate theater, and if you're an actor on stage, hats off to you. Meryl Streep, think about what she's done for us, for example. Others as well, but I do admire her. So actors will do that.
Okay.
They show up and they really make the effort to get out of their own way.
Right.
And connect like that.
Yeah.
And so they are able to transfer that to the stage. So they have a reason to do it. Whereas our reason to do it would be to be authentic. Okay. So the actor has to be authentic on the stage. The true character, whatever that is. We are doing the same thing. And we're not really playing ourselves. We are being ourselves. So it works the same way the more you get into it. It's like medicine. Feels more and more comfortable the more you do it. It becomes fun.
Right. Yeah. So you've talked about, what it means a bit to be authentic and what that feels like to you. But I often wonder, when we talk about being authentic, why does it even matter? Like, why does it matter to be authentic? And is it something that you foresee as being something valuable for somebody to even entertain if they have a somewhat good enough or satisfying life? What's the value in authenticity in your mind?
That's a good question. Well, the value of authenticity. So what do we mean when we say authenticity? First, so we have to come to that first. So it's a bit like, for me, the value for authenticity is there's an attempt at some kind of accuracy. So if I can find the center of the hub, the balance around the decisions that I have to make about life, okay, so that I don't feel conflicted about those decisions. Okay, like for example, you said you wanted to do this show. My center of gravity is very strong. Absolutely, let's do this. Come out and let's have a conversation. No problem. I have no conflict around it at all. So that's authenticity to me. It's accurate. I wanted to do this. I love these kind of conversations. Right. I really love them.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's authentic. I love playing the guitar. I'm a house guitar player. I'm not a pro. I don't need to be a pro, but I love strumming the strings. Yeah. I love it. When I do it, it feels right. So when I think of authenticity, I think of somehow calibrating myself in the direction of things that feel good. Now, do I accomplish that all the time? Absolutely not. Sometimes I wonder, why in the world am I doing this? And sometimes I'll go down a path and I'm in something and I know everything about me knows that, well, this is just really not the right shirt to wear. I really don't need to buy this thing, right? I'm not, and yet for some boneheaded reason, I still buy the thing, right?
Right.
Or I'll still stay in something when I know that it's not suiting me. So I'm denying myself a smoother existence. Now, we're talking idealistically here. Life can be really difficult.
Absolutely.
And I mean, we carry a hell of a lot of weight. And there are a lot of reasons why you can't just sit back and be authentic and find out exactly where you want to be and be there all the time. Children, past trauma. Can we list those? No. Do we need to? Absolutely not. 12 of them. Everybody here can do that. Boom, boom, boom. And we all have experienced it. Conflict with people. Lack of or too much of. I don't have enough money. I've got too much money. I don't even know what to do with it. I know people who have both, and they're both equally in the same, almost in the same quandary. Where do I go from here? I don't know. I've got so much I can't do anything. I'm paralyzed. I've got so little I can't do anything.
Right.
So authenticity is just about trying to find your way and find a little comfort. Just find a little jazz in the afternoon in the midst of all of it. And there was a great TED Talk. A photographer's named Nachtwey. He's considered the great war correspondent of all times, James Nave. And in that TED Talk, he gave 20 minutes. He read the thing. He didn't talk. He read it. He said, I can't talk. I'm going to read this. This is the greatest war correspondent alive at the time, still is alive, but he's older now. He can read whatever he wants. He has contributed more images to justice and to people's awareness of the troubles of the world than anybody has in modern times. He's excellent. And in that shot, in that talk, he showed this one image. He was in a feeding camp in one of the famine areas of the world. Shoots a photo of a man who was so close to being a skeleton that he probably was an hour away from dying. And the guy was crawling, trying to get somewhere. Knocked away, standing there with his lenses and his health and everything, shoots this picture. And he said, as I stood there and I looked at that guy crawling wherever he was going, I knew he wouldn't live long. He couldn't. There's no way. He was starving. He was a skeleton. But Nachtwey said the guy was still crawling. He was going somewhere.
Right.
And he said, if that man could do that with nothing, I have to go into the worst situations in the world and report on them. And if I don't come out, I don't come out. If he can do that, so can I. Now that's authenticity. That guy crawling, his life force was moving him forward. And I was like, you're right.
Absolutely.
Man.
That's beautiful.
Whew. I mean, you can watch it. It's James Nave. I don't quite know how to spell it, but he's a war correspondent.
And that reminds me of, it feels like there's like something in us that if we don't do it. Now this man you're talking about literally would have died if he hadn't have crawled.
He probably did die, because when you see the photo, you know he didn't have much left.
Right. But it's even metaphorically, I feel like there's something too. Oftentimes, there's something that's pulling on us, that we know that there will be a part of us that dies if we don't do this thing.
That's right.
It will be the wondering in the back of our mind always through the rest of our life until we do die. That's like, I wonder what would have happened at that pivotal moment if I'd done that. And it's not a long list. But there are these pivotal moments. There are big pivotal moments, and then there are smaller ones that just get under our skin. And I think that's where when we know that we can't not do something without it leaving a bit of a scar inside or outside of us, then that's giving us a clue on what it is that makes it what it means to be alive for us, uniquely for us.
And it takes a little bit of practice. I mean,
Absolutely.
none of us get it. And the, like when we have conversations like this, and we're on this side of the lens, and the other people are out there on that side, there's some impression that we might be giving that we have wisdom. And we do have. I have a lot of wisdom. I know a lot of stuff. Well, where did I learn it? I learned it from all the people that I've interacted with. So I really have a collection of knowledge that's an embodiment of everybody that I've ever met. So in some ways, it doesn't even belong to me. I mean, all I can do is I can organize it reasonably well.
Going back to your earlier metaphor with the clothing, though, I think there is also an element of being willing to try on a lot of things. And it just doesn't look right, or it just doesn't feel right, right? So I think to your point, there's so many times where I've been willing to go down a path and it did not work out, and I learned from that. I really thought it was going to work out, and it didn't work out, and there was a lesson in that. There was something that I learned. And then sometimes, you can have no idea if that path is going to work out or it's not going to work out. But the older I get and the more experienced I get, the more I'm willing to have it just be a disaster and learn from it, because I trust every single time now that I could be disappointed, I could be frustrated, I could have had to learn this lesson for the 50th time, but I'm going to keep trying to learn that lesson, right? And I'm just grateful that I keep being given by the universe an opportunity to learn the lesson.
Well, and most of this stuff is not that disastrous.
Right.
Now, some things are.
Yes.
And nothing taken away from the big disasters. And
Yes.
we've all made really huge, most of us have. I certainly have. We've made slips. We've made mistakes. We've really misstepped.
Yeah.
And in the misstep, you end up with something that might take a while to recover from. And sometimes I don't learn from it. Sometimes I'll do it again. You'd think you'd learn, but eventually it all kind of collates.
Right.
And one of the things that I think is really worth considering, and this has been always helpful for me, from an artistic, creative point of view. And what is creativity? You were born with it. There's plenty of it. We're talking about organization here, as much as we are talking about creativity. I do attempt to make something out of whatever happens to me. It may be nothing more than an Instagram reel. I will make something out of it. I will reflect on something. If something pops, I'm like, wow, that's kind of an interesting photo. I'll take it and I'll post it on social media.
Yeah.
Or I'll take it and I might make a commentary out of it. Or I will generate something in my journals.
Right.
Julia Cameron and I worked together for years in the Artist Way business, and
Right.
I still teach Artist Way classes. And for those of you who know the Artist Way, you know it's a very powerful book. It's still in play 30 plus years after it was published by Julia all those years ago. We ran creativity camps in Taos, New Mexico for 6 or 7 years. And in the Artist Way, you learn how to just show up and make something. And really, at the core of it, if you want to know why the Artist Way works, Julia says just show up and make something. It doesn't matter what you make, just make it and then make something else and make something else, and eventually, that making will make more of your authenticity emerge.
Right.
We're makers, and so you just make something out of it, and it does not have to be pro.
Right.
It doesn't have to be pro.
So you're talking about just enjoy the experience of creating.
Yeah, just take in whatever it is that you have, and I mean, maybe you sing a song to your dog when you feed your dog. Make up a song.
Right.
I mean, how many mothers make up lullabies for their children?
Absolutely.
Well, what is that? If that's not great creativity, I don't know what is. And why are you doing it? Fathers too, but I think of the mother first holding the baby.
Right.
You know, when the baby emerges, the mother takes the baby in the arms and does a coo. That's the song. If that's not authentic, what is? After that, it might get a little off the rail, but in that moment, So we're perfectly capable of making something like that.
We are perfectly capable, and one of the things that I noticed whenever we were at your book launch last week was
Last Sunday.
How
yes. About that.
And was your mom's?
Not last Sunday, Sunday before last.
Sunday before last. Your mom's name was it Bobby Sue?
Bobby Sue.
Bobby Sue. One of the things I noticed as your friends and you were talking about your mom was that she sounded like somebody who really supported you early on with being with not necessarily doing what everybody else was doing. What was the quote that you said? You said that your mom, it was either you or Bob that was saying that you were ordinary people doing something extraordinary. Was that it?
I think it was something like that. We're just ordinary people doing what sometimes becomes extraordinary. It's like I think is what it was. She said so much, and I was doing a book launch, and it was a gathering of the tribe and my friends, and it was not really a show in the sense of I'm launching my book and I'm reading my poems, and it was more a 35 people in a room, and I was facilitating a show and also a conversation, and many of the people I knew, so I was referencing the people in the show. And I don't quite remember what that was. I did record it. It's on SoundCloud.
Okay.
Twice
Right.
5 Miles Radio, SoundCloud, if you want to hear it. But I, my mother was always talking about how the ordinary is extraordinary, how it's unwise to try to categorize that. It's always, you're always going to miss.
Right.
Because there's nothing really ordinary except everything is ordinary. And when you realize the ordinariness of infinity, you have the cosmic awareness. It's almost like it's there. So it's extraordinary to us because we can be dazzled.
Exactly.
Right? Wow. But really, we are part of the dazzle. We're not exclusive of it.
Right. I think what I loved about that statement in the story at the time is that it felt like your mom was such an encourager of whatever you were doing. It felt like she saw in what you were doing, she was encouraging you, because we were talking about poetry and you going out and doing your first poetry with Bob, and you were out there, spoken word, right? You were out there doing this, and nobody else really around you was doing this type of work.
Right.
And so not everybody would have encouraged you in that moment. Not everybody would have seen the beauty of it, and would you have felt like, I should keep doing this. I should keep, what else is down the road?
Well, for those of you who are listening, Beth is referencing a business I started with one of my creative collaborators a long, long time ago here in Asheville, where we are now, or in Black Mountain. And the business was called Poetry Alive, and we memorized poems from the school textbook and performed them as theater. Okay? And the idea came from the National Storytelling Festival in Jonesboro, Tennessee. The storytellers on the stage telling stories. Our idea, rising from the stories from the stage, was, okay, what if you told poetry instead of stories? It's pretty simple. And the reason why we thought telling poems would be easier, because once you have the thing memorized, you don't have to think of it again. You've got it, right? But you do have to work at it to get it memorized, which we did. And so we were able to present ourselves to school students all over the country, performing these poems from the school textbook. The teachers would send us a request, we would memorize it and go in and perform it, like The Road Not Taken, 2 roads diverged in the yellow wood, and sorry I cannot travel both and be one traveler. Or Robert Frost, stopping by woods on a snowy evening, also The Road Not Taken. Whose woods these are, I think I know, his house is in the village though. Or The Raven, by Poe, Once Upon a Midnight Dreary, as I pondered, weak and weary. Or The Fish by Elizabeth Bishop. I caught a tremendous fish and held him beside the boat, half out of the water, with my hook fast in the corner of his mouth. Or, one more, Emily Dickinson. I'm nobody, who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Shh, don't tell. They'd banish us, you know. How dreary to be somebody, how public, like a frog, to tell one's name the livelong day to an admiring bog. Now, the reason I know all of those is because we did them 1,000 times. We kept getting, please do, I'm nobody, one more time. Well, if I have to do it, you can't forget it after you do it a whole lot, right?
Right.
So when I did that business, by that point, I was in my 30s. I had done a pizza restaurant, I had done surveying, I had done hiking stores, I'd sold t-shirts all over the country, I had gone back to college and gotten an undergraduate degree in international relations and studied French. I'd sold mistletoe one Christmas. The list is really long. I'd done all kinds of things, waited tables, you know. May I take your order? Oh, medium rare, no problem, back soon. Okay. So by the time we got around to the Poetry Alive project, I'd done so much, my mother was not surprised that we were experimenting with one other thing. And she always would say, she said, one of the things you have to be very careful about, you have to be very careful to listen to what is being presented to you, because you are a harbinger. And what I often would do, I would get things, I would start out too soon.
Okay.
Like we did Poetry Alive in 1984. That was back when the Poetry Slam was getting started in Chicago at the Get Me High Cafe underneath the bridge with Mark Smith at the same time, right? We were really early adapters. Now, all these years later, the Poetry Slam is a huge thing. It's everywhere. Poetry, spoken word, everybody knows what it is. Back then, nobody had ever seen it.
Right.
Okay, so we were a little ahead of our time. And so my mother was always confident that whatever I would do would be on the pulse of what was going on in the culture at that moment. And we're still doing it. I'm still here. This is what's going on in the culture right now.
Right.
What we're doing right now, what you're doing, what I'm doing. We are participating in creative leadership just by being here. And that's what's happening. And that's what this culture needs. Can you lead a revolution? Can you change the world? No. It's too big. You can't change the world. Can you make a ripple in a lake that will ripple out and land somewhere that's meaningful for somebody? Maybe if you do one ripple, it's not going to work. But what if you did a ripple every day? Somebody's bound to hear it.
Absolutely.
And that's what my mother was talking about. You just got to put the ripples in the lake.
Yeah, I love that context.
Because when that lake ripples, you definitely can change the lake. You might not change the world, but the lake knows it. Right. And maybe that's all you need.
Yeah.
Because a fish will catch it. Oh, there's a ripple. And then off the fish goes with the message.
So I would be interested what you would share with somebody. There's so many people during COVID that woke up to something within them that was unfinished or never discovered. Maybe it's a bit of the authentic self, right? But there's something in them that they've wanted to do that they're like, am I going to get that opportunity in my life? It sounds like you've always been an explorer, somebody who's been willing to try something new. And not everybody has been willing to do that. I'm wondering what you would say to somebody who has something in their heart that they really desperately want to do, and they're not sure that they can get past the fear. Has there ever been a time that you've felt fear to do something, and what are your tools? What do you do? What would you say to somebody who's really wanting to do something that seems impossible?
Well, the thing I would say to anybody who wants to do stuff that seems impossible, start small. Really. Don't write a book, write a sentence.
Beautiful.
Okay, really. I mean, it's just, you got to start small, because that stuff the reason why it seems impossible is because it actually is impossible today. Take,
Beautiful.
for example, an online influencer. There are plenty of them out there.
Yes.
And many of them, and you know some of them because you follow them, they're very advanced. Watch their offerings. The videos move fast. Now, we're not as advanced. We're doing something a little more DIY here, right? They have directors, they have editors, they have staff, they have all these people that are helping them make this stuff happen, okay? They started very slow. And they thought, I'm just going to try one little video or whatever it is. And then they did it again to the next day, and the next, and the next, and the next. So if you do that over a period of 3 years, whatever it is, start really slow, and you write 1 page a day, not morning pages, just 1 page, just write one little story about why you love to brush your teeth, why you like to iron, why you never have really liked to change tires on your car, whatever it is. 1 page. And you do that every day for a year, you're going to have 365 pages.
Absolutely.
But it's really going to seem small.
Yes.
Now, the way I deal with this, it's like when I was a boy, 15, my father worked for the power company. And he would get up in the morning, take his lunch pail, go out, work all day, and then he would come home. And he would do it again the next day, and the next, and the next. And he was a World War II veteran, so he wasn't that happy. If you've ever been to war, you know you don't come back the same as you did when you left. You're very different upon return if you've been in the war itself. And he had been. But he loved to play the fiddle. So he would come home at night and play the fiddle. So his happiness was the fiddle, right? Now, they weren't pro fiddlers. They were Appalachian fiddlers. I learned the guitar playing with my father. His fiddle, I played the guitar. But I watched him go to work every day, and I thought, I just can't punch a clock. I just can't. There's got to be something else over the mountain. Got to be something else. And so I decided that I was going to try to make a life that did not require me to punch the clock every day.
Yes.
That did not require me to conform to the boss, hit the factory floor. Okay. And more or less, I've been able to do that. Okay? I've been able to do that. Sometimes I think I failed in my trajectory, and I think I may have sold myself short because I was so determined to stay free that that my sense of freedom became my confinement. So I didn't realize, oh, well, you could actually work with a group of people and have a job, and it could be a really delightful job. And, you know, a lot of people will smile at you and say, hey, just keep the day job because I like my day job. Okay? So in my effort to stay free, I created my own confinement.
Interesting.
So it's not. Now, would I recommend somebody else try to stay that free? Yeah, I would say do it.
Yeah.
I would say absolutely do it. But I would also say you got to be. This is where your authenticity thing comes in. I mean, man, you've really got to you got to figure out where that pulse is, and that's hard to do. And it's as hard for me to do right now as it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I have a little bit more to work with.
Right.
And I don't worry as much. And yet I'm like, gee, man. Whew. And I would like something. I would like to just land one substantial, beautiful thing that is just my glowing crystal ball. And I haven't quite done that yet. And I don't even know what that is.
I was just going to ask that.
I don't know what it is, but I'm getting closer. Part of it is this, like the way you and I connected,
Right.
okay, is part of the way that I'm trying to come at things authentically and say yes and be present and just really connect. And you and I didn't know each other. We just were strangers.
Right.
We met online and we did a radio interview. And then somehow I'm in Asheville and somehow we're here now. And we're no longer strangers. We're here together in person. So that crystal ball there's something there. And I don't know what it is yet. So I am happy to wake up every morning. I'm really glad to be doing all this work. But I'm like, okay, you gotta find that beat. And it's like the musicians. The musicians don't ever stop. They play till they die. And I suspect even John Coltrane would have, when John, or any of the great musicians, think of Billie Holiday, think of the fabulous people. I mean, think of the ones now, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, you name the big ones on stage. You get them by themselves. You say, what's next for you? And they probably would have the same look on their face that I do, like, I don't know, I've done a lot, but I don't know what's next.
That was my last question for you. What's next for you? That was my last question.
Well, there's my answer.
You literally were like, you literally just took the words right
I just
out of
don't
my
know.
mouth.
What I know is what's next is I'll take the dog for a walk. Chewy, who's been with us the whole time. Chewy's not my dog, but everybody loves Chewy. I'll make a little food. I'll maybe make a phone call. I might read something. I'll go to bed early and I'll wake up tomorrow morning and I'll do this all over again. So tomorrow morning is what's next for all of us.
I think that many people that are watching or listening to this would appreciate that answer, because I don't know that everybody could enter into that question with the same peace that it felt like you had with that. Although you may have this crystal ball that you're talking about.
I don't have it yet. I'm waiting for it to float around.
Well, but it's a vague form, right? That is there. But yet there doesn't seem to be a lot of conflict around it. It feels like, and I could be wrong, it feels like that there's a natural something. There's just this natural, like, that's just part of it. That's part of being on this path. Is to go ahead and experience it's just like right there. It's like I can't quite get the whole form, and it's just a little outside my reach. But for you to say, I'm okay just making a phone call, maybe making some dinner. I don't know that everybody could feel at peace with this. Just right there. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And doesn't mean that I'm not going to get up tomorrow and really focus.
Sure.
But why not be at peace with it? Really, I mean, like, you're going to have to fall asleep. You do have to eat. It's fairly simple. So we can be at peace. And when you do have a little repose with the simple things of life, that's when you maybe will have some insight. And does it matter if the crystal ball appears? No. It makes no difference at all.
Right.
It really doesn't. Because we're just doing like the guy did at the feeding camp. He probably did die 2 hours later. He couldn't have lasted much longer than that. But when he did finally go, he probably, hopefully thought, well, at least I crawled. At least I did it. I was there.
As we close our interview, I would wonder also, just as I'm listening to you describe this, I would wonder how many people who do know you that would have an opinion about what your crystal ball already is.
I suspect a fair amount of them would.
Yes.
I suspect that would probably be wise to ask what it is. They can tell you. And that's a nice tip to end on. You don't have to know it, because everybody else around you probably does. All you have to do is trust what they say.
Absolutely.
And they'll tell you.
Right. Yeah. And that to me is just what a gift. That's something that you did and something that you've created in your life that somebody else already sees your crystal ball.
Yeah.
That it's been that impactful. It's the ripple that's already hit
That's
them.
the ripple, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are the ripple.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for your time, James. It's always good talking to you. I just love where we go. And
I do too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I appreciate you.
Thank you, Beth. And thank you, everybody watching. It's a pleasure to spend a little time with you, wherever you are in the world.
Absolutely. Until next time, friends.